What if the most powerful transformation in anime history was not a new ability at all? What if Luffy did not unlock something new during his fight with Kaido? What if he simply remembered something he was never supposed to forget? Welcome to One Piece Uncovered. To understand why Gear 5 is so significant, you have to understand where Luffy was right before it happened. He was dead. Not metaphorically. His heart had stopped. Kaido had pushed him past every limit he had, and for a moment, the future king of the pirates was gone. And then the drums started. That sound, the drums of liberation, is not just a cool musical moment. It is one of the most carefully constructed reveals Eiichiro Oda has ever written. Because those drums were not created for that chapter. They were hidden inside the story for over 20 years. When Luffy was a child, the villagers of Dawn Island described him laughing in a very specific way. They said his heartbeat sounded like a drum. A fun little character detail, right? No. Oda does not do fun little character details that go nowhere. He was planting a seed in the very first chapters of the manga that would not bloom until chapter 1044. That is the level of planning we are dealing with. Most power systems in anime follow a simple rule. You train hard, you push your limits, you evolve. Gear 2 came from Luffy studying the Wano fight and forcing blood through his body faster. Gear 3 came from inflating his bones. Gear 4 came from haki infusion into his muscles. Every gear was a physical modification born from effort. Gear 5 is completely different. Gear 5 is not a technique, it is a state of being. When Luffy awakens his devil fruit, his body does not just get stronger. The rules of reality around him start to bend. He can stretch the environment. He can turn the ground rubbery. He can grab lightning out of the air and slingshot it back. He can make a giant inflate like a cartoon character. The key word there is cartoon. Because that is exactly what Oda was going for. Gear 5 Luffy does not fight like a warrior. He fights like a Saturday morning cartoon character. He laughs while he is getting hit. He stretches and snaps back. He turns his opponents into props in his own personal comedy sketch. And somehow, that is the scariest version of Luffy we have ever seen. Why is that scary? Because there are no rules. When your opponent is bound by logic and physics, you can predict them. You can counter them. But when your opponent is literally playing by cartoon logic, when he is having fun while you are throwing everything you have at him, there is nowhere to go. Kaido, one of the most feared beings in the entire world, could not process what he was seeing. Here is where the lore gets deep. The world government spent centuries trying to erase every record of a fruit called the human fruit, model Nika. They classified it as a mythical zone type. They hunted it. They cataloged it under a fake name, the gum fruit, and made sure nobody would go looking for it. Why? Because Nika was described as the sun god, a figure from ancient myth who brought joy to slaves and made people smile, a liberator. Now think about that in the context of what we know about the Void Century, the ancient kingdom, and the world government's origin. The people who created the current world order did so by destroying something that came before. And whatever that thing was, it had a symbol. The sun. The Kozuki clan used a sun mark as a secret symbol for the liberation of slaves on Wano. The former slaves in Fishman Island had a sun mark tattooed on them by Fisher Tiger. The Buccaneers, Luffy's own father's people, were persecuted specifically because of what they might awaken in someone with their bloodline. Oda is not being subtle. He is drawing a direct line from ancient history to Monkey D. Luffy. And Gear 5 is the physical proof of that connection. Luffy is not just a pirate who wants to be free. He is the living embodiment of freedom itself. That is what Gear 5 represents at its core. It is not a power level upgrade. It is a philosophical statement. The freest man alive fights by no rules and finds joy in everything. But here is the part most fans gloss over. There is a detail in the Gear 5 reveal that almost nobody talks about. Something Oda drew that directly connects Luffy's awakening to a figure from the very beginning of the series. We will get to that in a moment, and once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. When Luffy enters Gear 5, his hair turns white, his clothes turn white, and his eyes develop a flame-like glow. Now look at Shanks. Shanks has white hair. Shanks has a calm, almost playful demeanor. Shanks has never once been shown fighting seriously on screen, and yet every major power in the world treats him with absolute caution. The five elders, the people who run the world government, stood up when they heard his name. The community has theorized for years about what Shanks really is. Some believe he is a direct descendant of the ancient Rocks Pirates era. Others believe he has a connection to the celestial dragons that goes deeper than what has been revealed. But here is a newer angle worth considering. What if Shanks has always known what Luffy was? What if giving Luffy the Gum Gum fruit was not an accident and not just a kind gesture? What if Shanks understood, on some level, that this fruit needed to reach someone with the will to awaken it? The world government sent CP9 agents to retrieve that fruit before Shanks even had it long. They wanted it badly. Shanks kept it, carried it, and then watched it get eaten by a 7-year-old boy in a small village on the weakest sea in the world. And he smiled. That smile matters. Oda draws character reactions with intention. Shanks losing his arm to save Luffy was the moment that set the entire story in motion. And the fruit at the center of that moment is the most wanted devil fruit in history. That is not a coincidence. That is a blueprint. We are entering the final saga of One Piece. The world is destabilizing. The Navy is fractured. The Revolutionary Army is moving. And Luffy now carries a power that the world government has feared for centuries. But here is what makes the final conflict so interesting. Gear 5 is not just a weapon. It is a symbol. The moment people start seeing it, the moment word spreads that the Sun God Nika has appeared, it is going to mean something to people who have never even heard of Luffy. Former slaves. Oppressed populations. People who have kept the memory of Nika alive in secret for generations. Luffy has always inspired people not through speeches or strategy, but through action. He shows up, he fights for what is right, and people follow. Gear 5 amplifies that to a global scale. When the final war comes, Luffy is not just going to fight as a powerful pirate, he is going to fight as something that represents hope to people across the entire world. Oda has been building to this since page 1. A boy who laughs while everyone else cries. A boy who refuses to be afraid of people more powerful than him. A boy who has never once backed down because he thought he might lose. Gear 5 did not change who Luffy is. It just finally showed everyone else what he has always been. Oda has said in interviews that the ending of One Piece has been planned since the beginning. Not the journey, not the arcs, but the ending. Which means that from chapter 1, the Gum Gum Fruit, the Sun God, the Drums of Liberation, all of it was sitting right there in plain sight. We just did not know what we were looking at. The biggest mysteries in One Piece have never been hidden. They have been shown to us over and over again. We were just not asking the right questions. So here is the question I want you to think about, and drop in the comments below. If Gear 5 was always the form Luffy was meant to reach, does that mean every single fight, every defeat, every moment of growth was not Luffy getting stronger? Was it just Luffy getting closer to remembering what he already was? Let me know what you think down below. If this video made you see Gear 5 differently, hit the like button and subscribe to One Piece Uncovered. We go deep on the details every week, and there is a lot more to uncover.